Hello again. This is Mike Jones, and this is the third in a series of video blogs I'm doing about the issue of certainty. I hope the other two turn out okay, that you could follow. And this episode, or today's talk, I just want to sort of mix a little bit with the issue of certainty in this whole political season. Now, I won't be shy to say that the election of Donald John Trump as President of the United States deeply troubles me. And I know there's a lot of Christians, especially in the evangelical world, that for them it's a miracle. It's a great thing that's happened. And I want to fit it in with what I've been talking to about certainty. And just review, and I talk about this in my book, Butterflies in the Belfry, that one of the issues that's been, I think, destructive to the church and evangelicalism is the concept of certainty based not on biblical principles but on Aristotle. Aristotle thought that reason based on what we perceive through our senses can take us to truth virtually every time. And biblical Christianity is not that way. Now, reason is not the opposite of faith at all. Reason is God-given and wonderful. Our senses are wonderful, but they're fallen and they're broken. So therefore, we cannot reach certainty. But especially, well, even throughout church history, but within evangelicalism, and I have been an evangelical for more than 15 years, it became essential that you believed all the right things, and down to precise things like how often you should do communion, when is Jesus coming back, which version of the Bible to use. All these issues, you had certainty about them, absolute certainty, and it became certainty breeds an arrogance that I know the truth, you don't. You go to a different church, and that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm talking about. There is great freedom. There is some things of certainty, near certainty, I would say, that we have to accept that God is there, that Jesus is his son, and the gospel is real. But I'm going to take it forward to this issue of Donald Trump, President of the United States now. And I'm trying to get this camera in a way that the sun shines, that I'm not in the dark. It's a lovely day here in the Cascades in Washington State, and I'm in quest to find my Jeep that's lost. It's here in the mountains somewhere, hopefully within 4 or 5 miles from here, but I'm looking for it. But first of all, looking at Donald Trump himself, like everyone, I've known of him by TV and things for 15 or 20 years. And I've known for a long time the man is a narcissist. He's a liar. And this is not a political statement. This is reality. And I've known it. If he'd run for Democrat side, and he could have, there's been times he would favor Democratic Party. I've been saying the same thing. Republican Party doesn't matter. So we've always had villains in the world. You know, it's just part of human society that there's a spectrum of people, and some are narcissists and some are, I deal with depression, anxiety at times, and so we all have our flaws. And we've also had villains in places of power. I think of Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, some of those people. I won't mention the Hitler word, but a lot of people make that comparison. But I feel great distress for two reasons. One, he represents my country of America. And number two, he was put into power virtually on the backs of the evangelical movement. And that I find deeply disturbing. And I find it deeply disturbing because we as Christians are the salt and light in our culture. We live in a post-Christian culture. That's just the way it is. There's reasons for that. We live in a country that was never a Christian country. It was never a theocracy from the day our founding fathers put it together, and I like it that way. I prefer to live in a secular country than a religious country where the whims and the, quote, religious certainty of those in power would dictate what you think. We don't want that. So that's what's really disturbing to me. The evangelicals, by this decision of supporting Donald Trump, have lost their moral authority. They have no credibility in this culture ever again, I don't think. And I just keep thinking, and I know other Christians have thought about this because I've heard these discussions, you know, the Christians who, I call them progressive Christians who are not a Trump supporter versus the evangelicals who are. That we want to start putting some kind of distance between us so we can say we're not like them. We don't represent that side of things. So, and there's been blogs after blogs after blogs, good ones. I'm talking about really smart Christian people who've both done video blogs and written blogs. I mean, I saw one on Phil Yancey. I just loved it. It makes you feel like you're not losing your freaking mind. I mean, this is what's hard for us who've grown up in the evangelical movement, is for all those decades, people like James Dobson preaching the character, moral character of the individual, of the father, the man. And then they fall in behind a man that's entire opposite of all these Christian principles that we've talked about. So anyway, my emotions are coming to the surface and I'm getting on my soapbox, but I'm going to move on and try to look at the why of this. And a lot of people are looking at the why, and it's a complicated story, but there's a historical perspective, political perspective, emotional, psychological perspective of how the evangelicals end up backing a man who's the entire opposite of what Jesus stood for and what evangelicals have been preaching for decades. So one of the things, and I've co-titled this blog, is the rise of the me Christianity. Back a number of years ago, Time magazine had on the cover, talking about the millennials, the me generation. Everything was about me, what I could get. And there's some truth to that. I really respect the millennials. I think they have a lot of values that we don't have, especially when it comes to racism and love. They do a better job of loving people than I think the older generation like I do, like my generation does. But they did have some selfish tendencies about things. However, evangelicalism has become me Christianity. And it's a complicated psychological story how this happened. And I don't have time now to try to express some of my thoughts. But when you have a gospel that says God accepts you through Christ, but you have a responsibility for a very high level of character and I would say works or behavior, that's a Christian behavior, and you believe that you can arrive to perfection, but in reality, we all have a fallen nature, and none of us can be this perfect person that we esteem to be. You start to develop a world of illusion and pretending, and evangelicalism has done that for a long, long time. And in this world of pretending, you start faking it. I faked it for 15 years, but it wasn't just me. I know my whole group faked it. We pretended things that were not true, and that's why we were always shocked when we'd see somebody who we thought was the most godly person on the planet who suddenly ran off with their secretary. Okay, I'm back. Had switched batteries. And as I was saying, what happened was evangelicalism, I mean, it's true in all religions really, but evangelicalism started creating this world of pretending because there's a certain moral character you're supposed to be living up to that no one does. And I don't mean morality like lying, cheating, stealing, murder, the Ten Commandments. I'm talking about words that you say, behaviors. You know, I was talking about church doctrine earlier, the certainty of certain church doctrines. But then it got more and more precise, more and more certain into all these different cultural mores, including what political party you're part of, and all your political beliefs became woven in, kneaded into this Christianity, including American nationalism. Now, a brief historical review is that, and I've written about this before, and lots of people have, that the Republicans' eyes went up when they watched Jimmy Carter win the election back in, what year that was, in the early 80s, I think. Maybe it's 78, 80, somewhere in there. And he won it through this new powerful movement in America, the evangelicals. Now, at that point, it made sense. Jimmy Carter was the first politician to say he was born again. He actually did take Christian morals of kindness, helping the poor, peace in the world, accepting immigrants, all these things which were consistent with the gospel, was consistent with Jimmy Carter. So it just made sense then. But I'm not going to get into details. I recommend that after you read my book, Butterflies in the Belfry, that you would read Frank Schaeffer's book, Crazy for God, because he describes what happened after that point. The Republicans saw this huge voting bloc and said, we want those people. And how are we going to get them? Well, the first step was to create a brand that the Christians would follow behind. And Frank and his father, Francis, came to the States on a legitimate issue of abortion, which the evangelical church had ignored and the Catholics had ignored to a lesser degree. But the Republicans said, there is a nugget of a brand that we can get the evangelicals hooked on, and then we can bring them into our fold. Once we have them in our fold, we can convince the Christians they must be pro-gun, pro-war, pro-defense, anti-welfare, all these other Republican things that you could argue, and I'm not saying that those things are anti-Christian, you can make that argument, but these are, I call them amoral issues. But they made it part of the new evangelical right that they had to agree with that. So then, pro-life, you know, I am definitely pro-life. I mean, I believe in the sanctity of life from conception to death. I don't want babies to be aborted, but I don't want immigrants being kept out and refugees from these awful wars, dying. I don't like wars. Wars are a horrible thing. And I don't understand how you can be pro-life and yet pro-war. And some people are. But anyway, when Donald Trump came along, there became this enticement of the evangelical right that we have to fall in line behind this guy who violates every Christian character we've ever thought of, because he now carries our brand, the Republican brand, which a good Christian must follow. And I'm going to close, but just, I remember, tell one story. I remember when I was an evangelical, hardcore, I was totally into this whole thing. And a friend of mine, I saw on his bumper sticker, Bill Clinton for president. I was furious. I thought, what's going on here? I thought you were a Christian. And he said to me the very things I'm saying here, that he believed in pro-life all the way through life. The dignity of all human lives. And it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, if you're Jew, if you're gay, if you're transvestite, if you're... It does not matter. Take it beyond humans into animal life, into the life of this planet. All these things God has created and are wonderful. But now, sadly, he's gone the other way, and he's a deep right-wing Republican and very pro-Trump. But anyway, he was the first person I met, and I honestly could not believe you could be a Christian and a Democrat at the same time. Now, I'm independent. I never want to be affiliated with a party. I'm really disgusted with both sides. But I'm going to end this whole section on certainty, and I'm going to try to stay away from more political talking in the future. But I thought it was very relevant to what's going on, because a lot of us Christians are just befuddled, confused about why Christians are lined up behind this madman and support him so strongly. All right, until next time, Mike Jones.